not a utilities person. So, but if that's a possibility, that's a great idea, especially if we have the funding for it. We do have definitely an issue downtown with the power poles being a little too low, I guess, because the trucks are hitting them. That could also be issues with maybe the truck driver hitting them, I'm not sure. But if that is, I think seeing no power lines makes the city look better. So if that's a possibility, that is great. I believe with those two projects, you're looking at a major revamp. The power lines would take a while, I am sure of that. But between making sure the roads are getting paved and our sidewalks, we need to redo our sidewalks. I know that's in the works as well, but that is also a project that needs to be pushed and needs to be continued on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bivens. Mr. Tim Brewster.
My top three priorities as far as infrastructure goes is, number one is our streets. And supposedly we have a 5-year plan taking care of our streets, but the issue that we're going to have with streets is our water lines are running through the streets and our sewer lines are running through the streets. So that's three top issues that basically we could kill 3 birds with 1 stone as we go through. Because if you don't have your water lines, your sewer lines, and your streets, you're really going to be out of business. So my top 3 priorities will be our streets, sewer, and water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewster. That concludes round 3 for us. We'll move on to round 4 now. Do you support term limits for elected city officials? If yes, what should be the maximum number of terms allowed? Should those who serve the allotted number of terms be allowed to run for the same office after sitting out for 1 or more terms? Mr. Jeff Harris.
I guess if you think about it, we are on term limits. You know, it's 4 years, you run. But I guess the question pertains more to after 4 years, can you rerun? I think if someone is willing to run for office and the people want to put them in office, I think that pretty much is up to the voters. And if they want to put them in, then I think they vote them in. If they don't, if they not served well and not represented them in at the fashion they don't feel like they should, then I think the voters have a right to not vote for them, and that would take care of that situation. So I don't think it's a problem for people to run consecutive terms if that's what they see fit to do, and the people want them in there. Then I think it's up to the voters to decide that.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Jimmy Parks.
I believe on term limits. I'm sorry, like Jill said, we already have term limits. You vote somebody into office, they don't do what you want them to do, vote them out in 4 years. Same thing with the utility board. The mayor, whoever the mayor will be, the utility board serves I believe it's 2 year. Is it 2 year? And then they're reappointed, or he can appoint somebody else. So to actually have term limits as far as you can't stay but 2, 4, 6 year, you already have that. And and the other thing I would suggest on that, if you got somebody, vote them into office 4 year, you don't like them, vote them out. We used to have a 2-year election. Every 2 years you had an election. Put somebody in office, you don't like them, you put them out in 2 years. I would like to go back to a 2-year election. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. The third answer to this question is a recorded answer from Mr. Buzz Hendricks. Mr. Soundman, if you would play Mr. Hendricks' cut number 5. Mr. Hendricks, your question is, do you support term limits for elected city officials? If yes, what should the maximum number of terms be allowed? Should those who serve the allotted number of terms be allowed to run for the same office after sitting out for one or more terms?
Well, I'm going to go against the grain here. I don't think there should be a term limit. If the people want you in there, and if you're doing a good job, you can stay in there 20 or 30 years. As long as you're doing a good job and you're honest and the people's voting you in there, I do not have a problem with it.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. The second question for round number 4. Employee morale is very important to the success of any enterprise. If elected, what would you suggest to improve morale and to maintain it at the highest point reasonably possible? The first answer from this goes to Mr. Tim Dixon.
The morale of employees would be upgraded if the employees knew that one day they would have the opportunity to expand growth within the city or the departments that they work in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The next person to answer this question was Mr. Jim Greenway. He'll be a recorded response. Mr. Greenway's cut number 5. Mr. Greenway, your question is, employee morale is very important to the success of any enterprise. If elected, what would you suggest to improve to or maintain employee morale at the highest point reasonably possible?
One of the things we're going through now is with our new administration, new city manager, and reorganization of the managerial chart. For the last 2 or 3 years, the management system was weaker than it is currently, and employees and even department heads did not know where to go to get the proper direction. And the improvement we're showing there, I think, is significant. I think that will improve employee morale. And hopefully, if we can begin more open communication lines with management, that will alleviate that problem also.
Thank you, Mr. Greenway. Ms. Renee McGill Schultz.
I'm really glad I got this question because I've been out visiting department heads and I hear a lot of positive talk. I don't hear many grumblings about people who have morale issues. I know that when you do change, and we've had a lot of change lately, some shifting and moving, and people are uneasy about change. I raise my hand. I don't like it very much either, but sometimes it's just necessary to have some change. So there's probably a little bit of a fear of the unknown and how things are going to work, but I personally believe with the leadership that we have in place with department heads across the city and utility base of folks, I feel really good about things. So I don't believe there's much of an issue to talk about there.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. The next question reads as follows. There has been a lot of talk and money spent on long-term projects in Loudon, like the Hutch property, a possible marina, the City Hall relocation, etc. Would you support a well-funded citywide beautification program that makes our town look more attractive now while waiting for these long-term projects to come to life? Mr. Tim Brewster.
I I think the biggest eyesore we have in Loudon, and everybody knows it, is when you drive across that bridge and see the Hutch property. I don't know that a beautification board would be effective to take care of a situation like that. I think that in order to do something about Hutch property, it should have been in a long-range plan before the property was purchased, and have a plan. We've been sitting on it for about 2 years now. And yes, we've painted the water tower, but you still see the dilapidated property when you come across the bridge. But if a beautification program could be effective financially in order to take care of some of the eyesores in our city, I think that's fine. I do agree. When Ken painted the old co-op building, it was the talk of the whole town. It was looking good. So maybe if some citizens would get effective doing the same thing and getting the same spirit about cleaning our town up, we wouldn't need a board, because we are the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewster. Mr. Johnny James.
I would support such a plan, but there's no reason that you couldn't work both of them at the same time. Rome wasn't built in a day. She won't beautify Loudon in a day. It's going to take a while. And I think that if putting our new facilities out here on 72 would certainly be a step in the right direction. But at the same time, we're looking at working downtown on the waterfront with grants and money. We have engineering going on right now for the downtown waterfront. So, in a sense, we are working toward beautifying Loudon, and we're all working in unison and trying to accomplish the same thing at the same time. So I don't think that we should make anyone suffer because the other wants to be first. I think we can do it, and do it in a timely manner, and succeed with getting it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Dennis Stewart.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think we need a beautification board. I'll tell you how come. End of our term as city council, the most unthinkable thing happened, and about 2 years into it, we learned that the general manager had cancer. And of course, after that, he passed away. And we certainly didn't expect that. And we went to work and got together, and we sat down with the new guy and told him, one of the first things I told him, this place is ugly. And this place is nasty and dirty, and it needs to be cleaned up. And he agreed with me. Immediately, he went to work on that. He went to work on it. Look at your curbs as you go home tonight. Just look at the curbs. There is no grass growing in them anymore. Look at the co-op building Mr. Brewster helped done. Mr. Rouse, I think, held that up for him to get him to come out and help us out and volunteer. And Mr. Rouse is doing a fantastic job. And we have a beautification board. It's called the Street Department. And they do a great job. And they do a fantastic job. But instead of spending money on a beautification board, what I like to do is hire those people some workers, okay? Because they are working night and day to make this the prettiest town they can get, and they don't have enough resources. They're trying to pick up your garbage, they're trying to pick up the brush, they're trying to pick up TVs, and all this, and still make this town a beautiful place. And they're doing all they can do. So if we really want to help them, what we need to do is hire them some help, and they'll do it. General Manager Ty Ross is doing a fantastic job, and just hold on. As you go home, just look around. Look around and remember all those buildings that were falling down. Remember it. And as you go through town, look.
30 seconds remaining.
Let me get this in. I was going to say this on all those questions, but I want to tell you all how much I appreciate you giving me the chance to even speak to you all. It's hard for me to get out and knock on the doors because basically I'm busy with these kids and I'm not making any excuses. I try to do what I can do, but I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I just want to ask y'all if you'd vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. The final question for round number 4. Would you be in favor of quarterly town hall meetings at which city officials could provide residents with a state of the city update? Mr. John Hutton.
Question is in favor of town hall meetings?
Yes, quarterly town hall meetings.
Yes, quarterly. Yes, I would be in favor of this. I think it's important to get the community involved, and I think that there's a need for, if I'm on council, I think something that we need to address is how we get the word out to our citizens. And I think that a lot of people we're in an electronic age now, and we need to get the word out. A quarterly meeting is good because you can come back face to face and talk about any issue, but I think there needs to be more involvement from our city to let people know what's going on. You know, there's all speculation about the buildings being purchased and what's going on in town. And I think it's not a secret because you can go to the meetings for sure, but I think a lot of people can't get to meetings, and I think it's important to have the information out there. Just let people know what's going on. Food Truck Friday, support the downtown concerts. If we put it out there all in one order, people know what they can attend. And I think that with the electronic age, my in-laws are in their mid-70s, and they can text and they get online, so we can't use that excuse of, I don't know how to use electronics. 30 seconds for me. People can see on a website what we've got going on and what's coming in the future, so that there won't be a lot of questions on what's going on, to where you have both sides talking about, you know, what's happening, and then you get the facts if they're out there in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton. Ms. Tammy Bivens.
I would be in support of town hall meetings. I'm not going to lie, this one has made me extremely nervous, but that's okay because as of yet, I have not tripped or fallen. That's a good thing. So I would be in favor of town halls, but I would also stress coming to the city council meetings has opened my eyes to a lot of things that go on that you are unaware of. Great things that are happening that you won't hear about in the newspaper or you won't hear about from your neighbors. So coming to city council meetings are a great thing. Town halls will be great. I would just hope that we could have the participation that is needed to continue those through. It's going to be contingent upon the town's involvement in it. I do agree with Mr. Hutton that doing a better job on the website, getting the information out there is great. We have, you know, wonderful activities that go on that the city hears about through word of mouth, which is also a great aspect of it. But town hall, I would definitely be in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bivens. And finally, in this round, Mr. Mike Cartwright.
I think the actual question would be, why wouldn't you be in favor of a town hall meeting every quarter? I mean, it's something that you can do for no cost. You can get to know your constituency. If they'll come. There's thousands of registered voters in the city of Loudon, but there's only 70 or 80 people here tonight. And I know that this had been advertised on the radio, signage out front, telephones. I think one thing that amazed me several years ago was when Channel 3, the community channel, quit broadcasting the Loudon City Council meeting, is how many people told me that they really missed seeing that. So I think that that might also be something to look into. If we could get back into some type of public forum like that, or whether it's some type of public access TVs, a YouTube news show, or something like that. But I think that a quarterly town hall meeting would be a great idea. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Cartwright.
Candidates and audience, you've made it to the final round now. Hold your applause, please. We now turn to questions that have been submitted by people in attendance tonight. And I was granted permission by the committee to do this any way I wanted to. We have 10 questions that have been selected, and coincidentally, there are 10 people up here to answer them. So I'm going to ask the 10 questions in the same random order we've been going, but they'll only be asked of one candidate so you can hear an answer to all the questions. And because they're only going to be asked of one person, I'm going to tell them who it is to begin with. Mr. Jimmy Parks, this is your question. 3-part question, it says at the top. Some question the motives of the high number of candidates. Keeping in mind yourself and future office holders, please answer these questions. Do you currently have health insurance? Are you running for office only to get health insurance? When it comes on the agenda, would you vote to stop providing health insurance for city council and mayor? Mr. Parks.
I am not running just for insurance. I am running because I want to like this community. I want to stay in this community. In fact, my wife told me that if we have to go on the city insurance, we're actually going to lose money because we got a policy that takes care of everything. And I'm not running just for insurance, but whatever the city council wants to do as far as providing it for anybody in the future, that'll just be something they'll have to do. But I am not running just for insurance. I have insurance, I have Medicare, and it takes care of me. But on the same line, whether I get elected or whether I don't, this is not on that, but each and every one of you people need to come to these city council meetings. We're spending your money. You need to come to the council meeting, whether I'm in here or whether I'm not. You need to come to these council meetings. We're spending your money. Come and let us know what to do with your money. You ain't going to just let anybody spend it. So come to these meetings and watch out for your money. And no, I'm not running just for insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. The next question goes to Tammy Bivens. Given the opportunity, would you vote to make Loudon's city recorder position an elected one rather than an appointed one?
I do know that in some cities that is an elected position. I would honestly have to study up on that to see what the rules are for making it an elected position because I'm unsure of that. I wouldn't have a problem with it being an elected position. My only concern I would have is that there is someone that we are paying full-time to do that position, and I would not want anybody to be out of a job over it. So if that were the case, then I think that there would need to be an amount of time that that person was given to say, we're going to make this an elected position and give that person an ample amount of time to prepare for that. I don't want to see anyone lose a job and over it changing from a full-time to an elected position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bivens. Mr. Johnny James, this is your question. It's a rather long one. It begins, breathing clean air is a right, not a privilege. According to the annual toxic release inventory, Loudon County ranks in the bottom or the worst 10% of 3,000 counties counted by the U.S. Census. Only 167 showed more toxic emissions than Loudon in the annual report published in October 2016. The worst toxic polluter in the city of Loudon releases consistently over 2 million pounds of toxic air pollutants annually, mostly carbon disulfide. Who considers this a city issue, and if so, do you pledge to help improve air quality in Loudon and be better stewards of the environment?
I certainly would be concerned to hear that. And yes, I would support the better air quality in the city of Loudon. But you must understand that as a city council and as a city of Loudon, we have to apply and make our efforts go to the federal level and get a hold of the EPA and get them involved in it, because they set the standards for the world, for the United States especially. And any standard that they set has to be maintained. Now, I'm puzzled to understand why, because I didn't know the facts, and that's the first time I've heard them. But I can say that if we, in fact, rank that way, we need to get them in here and let us look and see what's going on and why we are so low on the list. Because all those other cities and all those municipalities come under the same laws and same regulations as do we. We don't set the standards, and we don't do the testing. That's not involved. We don't have the technology or the manpower to do that. So we need to get a hold of, yes, as a city councilman, I'll tell you now, we need to find out from the EPA and the federal government, hey, come to Loudon, take a look at us and see what's going on. Because this is a shame. I mean, we don't need to be that way. When we got neighbors down the road, it's not that way. And we're not heavy with industry. We really don't have a lot of industry for a town our size. There's like Cleveland. They got more industry than we've got, 3 times industry. Hopefully, they're not as low as we are on the list.
30 seconds remaining.
So yes, to answer your question, I'm concerned about it, and I'm all in favor of getting it approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. The next question is for Mr. John Hutton. A lot of city departments need more manpower or staffing. Will you support trying to add more staffing?
If we need more staffing, I'm in favor of it if we can provide the wages. I know we've had some situations in the past where on the utility board we had a vendor come in and do some work, and it was outsourced, and there was some concern about jobs being outsourced, but it did save us from paying the wages, paying for the benefits, work comp, all that's included in that. So that was a big concern. But if we're in a situation where we need to provide more jobs, I think most definitely I'd be in support of it, because we do have some people that are hitting retirement age, and some people that have retired in the past, those jobs weren't filled. And so I would be in support of getting us in position to have what we need. I wouldn't want to put us in a position where we have too many people where they just stand around. But if somebody can justify a good, honest day's work, then I would be in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton. The next question goes to Mr. Jeff Harris. What types of business incentives do you feel are most important to attract investors?
This again is very competitive. Trying to recruit industries or trying to, come up with a situation that would benefit them and benefit the city. We do pilot programs, tax abatements, all those things you have to do. If you don't play in that arena, the next community down the road does. So we get called on those things all the time. We need to come up with creative ways. If we need to somehow make an arrangement with the property, somehow give them the property so they can develop it if it's not been developed. There's all kinds of incentives out there. We need to get creative with it because I'm telling you, it's a very competitive environment. And if we don't attract them and we don't offer them something, they'll use what we offer and they'll go somewhere else and then they'll come back. So it's very competitive, and we have to do the best we can to offer whatever incentives we can to attract industries. And pilots, we've done several of them, as you know, and that's something it's just a wave of the future, and it's going to probably continue. Yes, I would.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Our next question goes to Mr. Tim Dixon. Loudon is full of passive residents. Council members cannot read minds. How do you think you can proactively get residents to move from a passive status to a more active status?
There was talk about having a quarterly forum earlier. Those forums would be a way to go with getting people maybe to come out, and if you could move those forums to different communities in the city of Loudon. If you have one out on 72, that may attract some of the residents in that area. If you had some in downtown, that would attract some of those downtown. If you had some in the West End, that would attract some of those areas. If you had some what we call Mexico area, if you'd go over there and have a forum there, that would attract some of those people. Maybe they'd get the folks out and be more participated in your city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Our next question goes to Ms. Renee McGill-Schultz. What role, if any, should the city have to address the drug problem other than through the police department?
First off, kudos to all of the people who put these questions in the box because they're excellent. And I actually just had a conversation with our police chief about this matter. It's something that concerns me. We have a lot of pill activity in our community. And one of the things that was brought to my attention in that conversation that I had with the chief of police is that he would like to see us put some of his men back in our schools. They get to know the kids, they get to know what's going on, they hear the talk, the chatter. The children form cliques and they pass information amongst themselves, and he felt strongly that that could be very helpful in solving some of these issues. Also, we have one full-time officer that's dedicated to drug eradication, and she works very hard, multiple hours, much past 40 hours work week. She's very passionate about the work she's doing. We do have some assistance from our drug task force.